gentlemen, welcome to the Kulturecast. I am your host, Chris Stachio, and I am joined by the immensely talented Jess Byard.
Hello.
Boy, hello is kind of the only thing one could say when talking about this movie.
Yeah.
Right? We are rounding out You've Never Seen September with a look at Dan Aykroyd's beginning, middle, and final directorial debut.
Thank God.
Nothing But Trouble.
Give me the keys, Mike.
Chevy Chase.
Hey, you just passed the Garden State Parkway South.
Don't worry, I'll get you there.
Demi Moore.
Oh, no, cop. Driver, step outside the car, please.
John Candy.
Read 'em? Yeah, that's nice, thanks. The lower back, please. I got an itch right up in there. It's good, thank you. Not today, sir. This may be Valkenvania, but it is still America. And wouldn't mind, would you just write a ticket here, or we could settle it some other way, perhaps?
That's not the way things work around here.
What is this place?
Revolving District Court for the Village and Shire of Vulcanvania is now in order. The Honorable Reeve Alvin Vulcanizer presides.
Dan Aykroyd.
Put out that dog rocket!
Nothing But Trouble.
So sorry.
Hey, you know, you and I ought to spend a little more time together.
I'd like that.
Would you?
Welcome to the last resort.
You look pretty this evening, sister. Doing something different with your hair?
Where something's always cooking.
How about a nice Hawaiian punch?
You're some good friends.
Okay, let's eat.
Where someone's always shaken. And anything's better than house policy.
What's house policy? Whatever a man touches, there's one she keeps. What?
All they wanted
Oh, no, wait a minute. I just went through a damn stoplight.
was a little getaway.
I think the two of you'd make a perfect couple.
You make this your bride.
No, not in front of all these people, Your Honor.
Now.
All they got was nothing but trouble.
So, look, before we talk about the movie, I feel like I should say, due to last podcast on the left, this movie has gotten a lot more of publicity in the last couple years than it honestly deserves. So, yes, I know people talk about this movie. Fuck you. We've heard it all. We're going to do our own thing about the movie because honestly, it deserves to be talked about. So, like I mentioned, it's directed by Dan Aykroyd, story is by Peter Aykroyd, Dan Aykroyd's brother. Screenplay is written solely by Dan Aykroyd. It stars Chevy Chase, Dan Aykroyd, John Candy, and Demi Moore, and the film centers around Chevy Chase and Demi Moore as two yuppies who get caught in Vulcanvania by Dan Aykroyd in the most disgusting old man makeup one person could honestly believe is real in a film setting. What do you say about this movie? Like, this is such. I
don't know. I don't know what this is just.
What is this?
This is Dan Aykroyd's sad attempt at remaining relevant in the 90s. That's what this is.
So, look, this film came out in 91, several years removed from both Ghostbusters 1 and Ghostbusters 2. Jess, I know this is your first time seeing the movie. What did you think What did you think about this mess of a movie?
I don't know how this movie was a thing and had so many seemingly talented people involved.
Is Chevy Chase a seemingly talented person, or is he just an asshole?
I mean, he's overwhelmingly an asshole. That's for sure. But I mean, fine. I like Christmas Vacation still. You love Fletch. Like, we have our...
Yeah.
I mean, but in this movie, it's there are no jokes. You said this was a comedy month, and I don't believe you, because there's not one single joke in this movie. I couldn't
Unless you're talking about the movie as a whole, which is a joke.
Ooh, well, that's... Yeah. It's still an unfunny one, though. Like, it's...
So look, here's the thing. On the Kulturecast, I try not to pile on a movie. And you know what I mean. I mean, look, enough podcasts exist like How Did This Get Made or any of these other fucking just self-deprecating, cynical podcasts that tear movies down. But sometimes one encounters a movie that makes it, dare I say, impossible not to just tear it down completely.
There's nothing really redeeming about this movie at all.
Right? And that's the weird part is not only, like you mentioned, does it have a fair amount of supremely talented people. John Candy, Demi Moore, Dan Aykroyd, Chevy Chase. Like you mentioned, Chevy Chase is in my favorite movie of all time, Fletch. Dan Aykroyd is in Ghostbusters, which is widely considered to be a truly important comedic film from the 80s. John Candy has been in several comedic films that are considered classics from the 80s. And Demi Moore
is not a comedic actress.
Well, Taylor Negron is in this film, who's widely considered to be a fantastic stand-up comedian. However, in this film,
he's just why. Honestly, you asked me. So I started watching this movie, and I didn't know what the hell it was about. I was going in entirely cold. And, I'm like, okay, so the movie's going to follow Chevy Chase and Demi Moore, fine, whatever. I kind of assumed that. And then for some reason, Tyler Negron and the actress's name is escaping me, but the woman who plays his sister, Ronalda, are just suddenly two supporting characters for some reason.
Who are then halfway forgotten about halfway through the movie?
Yeah, they're at the beginning, they're introduced, they kind of oh, haha, they invite themselves along to, they think they're going to go on some trip with Chevy Chase, who is this wealthy finance publisher or whatever.
Oh, and it's a fucking trip. It is a trip and a half.
And they're going to go on some little, getaway with him and just invite themselves, but they're not even a part of the movie at all, really. And they disappear, pretty much through half of it. They're somewhere else, running off with John Candy.
So look, this is one of those movies where, like I mentioned, and like Jess has kind of already gone into, it is a film that, as much as I don't want to badmouth the movie, this movie is a fucking nightmare. It is a legitimate nightmare to watch.
It is. It's weird. It's just...
Imagine if Texas Chainsaw Massacre was made by someone who didn't understand either comedy or horror.
Nor horror, yeah. And that's exactly what this movie is. It's basically like Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 meets, I don't know, your kind of goofy, surrealist late 80s comedy that, it's Dan Aykroyd, and he's writing this thing, and essentially what it is Demi Moore and Chevy Chase and, the other two, they end up in this weird town because they decide to floor it from the, small town cop. They're going to outrun him, and then they can't, and so Chevy Chase tries to talk his way out of it. I'll just pay off the ticket, whatever. And then they get put in front of Dan Aykroyd in the world's worst fucking makeup, and he pretty much just sentences them to having to stay in the town,
the dungeon of the courthouse.
He doesn't sentence them, he just makes them wait, he's waiting on their trial or whatever. For whatever reason, they have to stay, unlike this other group of people that just randomly shows up and it has a Baldwin attached to it. I believe it
sure doesn't it? It's Danny Baldwin.
Oh, was it Danny Baldwin? That's which one it was. Each, the farther down the Baldwin line you go, it kind of just looks like somebody erased Baldwin features, but they're still there.
Alec has the features, and then the one... Well, who's the one who was in Biodome?
That's Billy Baldwin, I think.
Billy? No.
I think.
No. Is that Adam? That's Adam Baldwin. No, that's Stephen Baldwin.
That's right.
Good God.
There's a lot of Baldwins.
There are a lot of Baldwins. And boy, and there's one in this fucking movie, isn't there?
Yeah, the group shows up and they get put in front of, the judge that is Dan Aykroyd, and he straight up sentences them to death. And that's when I'm like, what movie is this? I honestly, when you gave me the list of movies to pick, I did pick it because it was ooh, this is this, supposed to be kind of the spooky one. I'm like, all right, what is this?
Oh, it's a
haunted town they get.
It's a fucking nightmare, isn't it? Whew.
It's they show up in what would be the Texas Chainsaw Massacre town, but
if that town existed
not
in the movie.
cannibals. And just weird people. It's also kind of like the Tales from the Crypt episode where Tim Curry's playing like 4 different characters.
Yes.
I kind of felt like this, where you're just trapped.
That's the one with
in
Ed
this,
Begley Jr., right?
Yes, Ed Begley Jr. is like the door-to-door vacuum cleaner salesman.
Yeah. It is kind of like that in a way, isn't it?
It has that gross, just
like
I want to take a shower feeling while you watch it.
The CGI is disgusting, and like we know it's disgusting, or not the CGI, but like the makeup is disgusting, intentionally disgusting.
Yeah, he's supposed to look slimy, like he's supposed to look curdled, and I also don't understand what the rules are of this universe because I like
how you're giving this film a universe like it's its own thing.
I mean, it is, because I thought we were in just like a real world based.
So wait, hold on.
Then we get.
Did you watch the trailer before you watched the movie?
No.
No! You went into this movie completely blind?
Yes. Entirely blind.
Jess, I feel like on behalf of the Kulturecast and the production team,
you have to apologize.
I have to apologize. If you know nothing about this movie and you watch it cold, the scene where Dan Aykroyd like comes forward as the judge, like, how upsetting was that? Be honest. Was it like? God.
I was like, what the fuck am I looking?
You didn't know that's what was going on in this movie?
No, I had no idea. I saw the fucking like poster, which is them, like the 4 of them. And you, I guess you see Dan Aykroyd in the makeup, but it's not quite as obvious in the poster.
It's not as disgusting.
Textured it is. But yeah, you reveal Dan Aykroyd is this like melting cheese man who stops people when they go through his town and then keeps them basically and either kills them or I guess makes them part of the town. I don't really know. The rules are unclear.
I mean, at some point it's claimed that he killed Jimmy Hoffa.
Yes, that's when when Chevy Chase and Demi Moore kind of figure out what's going on. They end up in this room where all of these driver's licenses are plastered all over the wall, and so like you see these people have been making people disappear forever, but then it gets stupid where it's like, oh, and here's famous people, like famous disappearances, like Jimmy
Here's
Hoffa.
Jimmy Hoffa.
That's dumb. Why are you doing that? And yeah, there's a weird tone. This movie has no sense of tone. It's like you said, it seems like it has no grasp of horror and no grasp of comedy.
So here's the thing, like, a lot of this movie really is just, like, a riff on Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You've got a group of people driving through the country, they go to a rural town, and they get stopped by a rural family. And, like, that's pretty much the idea of Texas Chainsaw.
Yeah, and everyone in the town is on it. And when I mean everyone, we end up, like, at the end of this movie, when Chevy Chase and Demi Moore finally, like, okay...
Go to the state police!
Yes,
the state police!
Bring them to this town, and then they turn around, and fucking there are, like, over 100 and some people there that are like, hi, Judge, we love you, talking to Dan Aykroyd. And it's like, what am I supposed to believe is happening here exactly?
So that's the thing. It's like a bizarre it's almost like someone was like, let me take the things about Texas Chainsaw Massacre that work, like the dinner scene.
And by somebody, you mean the Aykroyd brothers.
Dan Aykroyd. Dan, I believe in aliens. And look, I believe in aliens too, but like,
right.
Dan Aykroyd, next level. It's like Dan Aykroyd read the Texas Chainsaw Massacre like script, looked at it and was like, I could do this, but a comedic version. And like that, those two tones, those two genres of film, though they do blend from time to time, they do not blend.
The Family one doesn't usually blend.
Yeah, like that it does not blend here. And oh dearie dear. This movie is Texas Chainsaw Massacre if it was made by someone who was a fucking idiot.
It's gross. Like it's gross.
Like
it's gross.
It's more gross than Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
But Can we, in the first instance of gross,
only the first one, not all of them. Let's go one by one. Highlights. Yeah.
But the first one is that actually, I guess it's a 1-2 punch because it comes at the beginning of, I guess, the movie, towards the beginning when Chevy Chase and Demi Moore are, which I only remember Demi Moore's character's name, who is Diane. I forget what everybody else's name was. But they're at the table where they have to now eat dinner with this awful family. And
which is pretty much just the scene from Texas Chainsaw.
Yeah, it's Dan Aykroyd in his makeup. You have John Candy, who is like the sheriff, and then you have John Candy and
John Candy, who was said by Dan Aykroyd, it's not a cheap drag piece. He's not playing a woman cheap. It's not a cheap John Candy in drag. Right. Yeah, okay, Dan. Okay. Sure, Dan.
And so they're eating these, I guess they're boiled.
Before the night games hot dogs. Before the night games.
Before the night games hot dogs, which are these, they're still in like the skin, like slip, and
they're floppy,
and they're gray, and they're floppy.
Oh, and they're floppy gray wieners.
And then you get this close-up side profile of Dan Aykroyd biting into one, and for some fucking reason, his nose turns into a dick.
You know, Jess,
I don't know why.
Jess, it upsets me that we're talking about this so much because, like, yeah, so why?
I don't know, but it happens twice in the movie.
Like, why did Chevy Chase and Dan Aykroyd, like, why did Dan Aykroyd think, okay, look, yeah, his
cocaine.
Dick.
That's what he thought.
His dick looks like a nose, or his nose looks
like a dick.
His nose looks like a dick, but then you don't have to further like beat it into us by literally having his nose
be a dick.
Like the fucking line and the fucking head, and it's just like, dude, what?
And
why?
That happens again at the end of the movie.
Reason. You're right.
Yeah, when he like looks at him when it's. I don't know. I don't get it. I have no idea why. And I just...
Like, his nose already looks like a dick. What was the point of literally having his nose become a dick? Like,
for 10 seconds.
It is upsetting. It is more upsetting than I thought it would be.
It's very upsetting. I don't know if it's quite as upsetting as the other two members of this family that live outside.
You know, Jess.
Further my questions about this universe.
What is it? Bobo and Lil Devil? One of which who is played by Dan Aykroyd.
Yes.
And
he is more like that Tim Curry episode.
And not only is Dan Aykroyd playing one of the infant adult babies,
they live out in the junkyard part of the property for
he had to direct in that outfit. Can you imagine that?
Like, have to.
Okay, we need to light this better. Dog, you're in a fucking like adult baby costume. Like, shut the fuck up, Dan.
An adult baby costume, and where you also have like a stomach like a pig. Like you have like multiple teeth almost. And
you know
I hate that I just had to say that, but that's what they are.
Ladies and gentlemen, please put that on her gravestone. And I quote, multiple teats. Like the thing about the thing about this movie is realistically what it honestly feels like. And look, we're going to have multiple jokes. We're only getting started on the jokes. This movie is really bad. And at the same time, and I'm sure you probably get this, Jess, there are some good ideas. Like,
yes, I entirely agree with you.
Like, it could have just been Dan Aykroyd saying, I want to do Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I want to do like this whole, city folk getting trapped by the fucking country folk. It's based off of a true story where Dan Aykroyd got stopped in the middle of nowhere and something like this happened. Obviously there was no penis nose, but it's like, like a justice of the peace was like, or, justice of the peace was like, you know what, whatever, pay your fucking fine and then get out of here. So it happened to him in real life. But the issue is, Dan Aykroyd's known for comedy, so he felt like he needed to make this comedic and horror, and it's like it could have worked if realistically, if this movie was just a straight horror movie, would it have worked? I don't know, but I guarantee you it would have had a better shot at succeeding than this weird, like, melange of the two.
I mean, this movie is much more just unsettling than it is funny.
It's disturbing.
I don't think this movie is funny at all. None of the jokes land at all. And I mean, Chevy Chase is Chevy Chase. And I know that he obviously hates this movie.
Not only does he hate this movie, he was apparently, like, screaming and yelling and degrading Dan Aykroyd during on set. Which, like, look, you know what?
When he was wearing that costume.
Like, listen here, you fucking piece of shit. But, like, apparently Chevy Chase, like, okay, minor aside, Chevy Chase is apparently a massive asshole. And it's been, like, documented multiple times by multiple sources. Chevy Chase is a massive asshole in real life. But apparently he was, like, making Dan Aykroyd, who was directing this film's life, harder than it needed to be. So
yeah, that seems about right.
Right. So, like, as bad as this movie is, Chevy Chase was a fucking dick on top of everything else.
Right. How much of this movie... Well, and I know, like, Chevy Chase said that, he didn't initially like the script, but he thought that he could fix it by by doing improv throughout it.
Yeah, like constant improv. I don't know, but I guess Chevy Chase felt like he must have been pretty fucking good at improv to think, I can fix it by just improving. Like, what?
Like, there's no jokes. And
And anytime there is a joke, Chevy Chase is like, I have to do what now? Like, he seems so disinterested.
Well, speaking of disinterested, let's talk about Demi Moore.
Look, we texted this back and forth earlier today. Yeah. Demi Moore, Stone Cold Fox. In Absolutely, this movie, 100%. In real life,
she's Mike indeed.
Yeah, she is a Stone Cold Fox. However, Demi Moore, I think you can say it for me, Jess.
Ooh, she's just not a funny actress.
No, she's not a comedic actress at all, and she's surrounded by ostensibly comedians.
Yes, ostensibly like the biggest comedians from like
their time and day
of their time. Yeah. Like, that's, your big...
John Candy, Dan Aykroyd.
And Demi Moore is a fantastic actress. I like her, but now I've seen her in this. And, let's also be honest here. This script is trash. She was given nothing to do. And for some reason, they have her try to do a lot of, like, these slapsticky sort of moments. And you have to be a specific kind of actor for, like, that's a thing that you practice, that you do. That's not just something you can just, okay, fine, I'll do slapstick one time. No, that's not. And you could tell that they're used to working, like Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase, that they're used to working with people on SNL who are those kind of comedians and who can kind of just fall into those roles. But Demi Moore is an actress, not a comedian, not,
and it shows.
Actress. And it shows. And that's, good for her for wanting to try this in what is it, Savage Steve Holland movie with John Cusack, One Crazy Summer. She's in that too, and she's kind of supposed to, play a little bit, the snarky, fun girl, but it just doesn't. She's just too much of a dramatic actress for me, and I can't get out of that. And it just seems like she's sleepwalking the whole time because she's not in a role that she is comfortable with. You can tell. She's not on a set that she's comfortable with. You can tell. And obviously between Chevy Chase and his behavior, and I'm sure just everybody on this movie at the time knew that they weren't making, the next fucking comedic Dynamite. But
well, and here's the other thing. You can have a straight actor as a comedian if the person who is the non-straight man in the duo is like a bombastic comedian, but Chevy Chase's comedy has always been
too calm.
He's like a cynical, fucking snarky dickhead. And so, like, it doesn't work. If you had an actor in that lead role who was over the top and bombastic and
If she could be the snarky, like, if she could be the one who could be the snarky asshole. You're kind of David Spade. You're kind of, Chevy Chase, where it's more.
But like Chevy doesn't work.
Just not, they're trying to make her be the bombastic one for some reason, and she disappears for half of the movie.
Literally not in half
the middle of the movie. She's just gone. She's with the two weird blobs in the junkyard playing some fucking weird ass card game for a good half an hour of this movie that we just keep cutting back and forth.
That's the other thing I don't understand about this movie is it feels like later in Chevy Chase's career, instead of writing a character and casting an actor to that character, it was like they were writing to Chevy Chase and casting Chevy Chase. Does that make sense? Right. So it's like, like that cynical, like sense. Fucking snarky, rattles off a one-liner, but doesn't acknowledge it
What
thing.
do you think Dan Aykroyd originally wanted in this movie?
I don't know. Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase don't seem to get along.
Exactly.
That's the weird thing here.
Bill Murray in this movie.
Oh, God. And Bill Murray is such an asshole, apparently.
Well, hey, they have the same, it's the same type of humor, though, right? It's
right.
It's I'm a snarky, smarty, dickhead.
Maybe, but here's the thing. So here's the thing that is the biggest disappointment outside of the fucking movie itself. I looked all day for the script for this movie. So the script for this movie was originally named Vulcanvania, which, by the way, Dan Aykroyd, as much as I know you love the title as Vulcanvania, like, that doesn't mean anything to fucking anyone. Like,
no, okay, fine. You're having Transylvania because it's a weird town with weird people. But Vulcan, what? They're aliens? I don't understand where you're going with that reference. Yeah,
I don't either. And Dan Aykroyd said, like, the movie will always be Vulcanvania for him. And look, the whole nothing but trouble line is a line. It's a line that Demi Moore says in the film. She's like, "You're nothing but trouble."
As she's jumping in bed, turned away from camera, and she says it kind of under her breath.
It's clearly ADR, folks.
And that's after she's having this weird moment with Chevy Chase because, of course, at some point she has to be the love interest. But it has no build-up. They just are together in this situation, and then all of a sudden they're alone in a bedroom, and they're going to make out, I guess, even though literally moments later the Baldwin gang got murdered.
Literally murdered. On a killer roller coaster.
Yeah.
Called Mr. Bone Stripper.
There are fun ideas in this movie. It's true. There are. It could be this really weird...
But, like, let's be honest. Could a killer roller coaster ever work in a serious movie?
No.
Okay, so, like, that's the thing. Like,
I've seen movies about killer elevators. I've seen movies about killer, beds. I've seen...
That's the crazy thing. Like,
it doesn't work.
But the problem is, like, comedy and horror mix. It's just, you have to be pretty adept at mixing them. And so, like, a killer with a killer roller coaster could, like, never work in a serious horror movie. It could work in a horror comedy, but you have to know what you're doing. And they don't.
Exactly.
They really don't. And, oh my God, like, the fucking dinner scene in this movie is almost like someone who didn't understand what made the Texas Chainsaw Massacre dinner scene great. They just wrote it because, like, we need to have a dinner scene with the weirdos. Like, what?
What can we make them eat? Let's make them eat floppy hot dog dinners.
Oh, God. And have a penis nose. And Hawaiian fruit punch out of a can.
Phallic imagery in this movie for no reason. It's just like a 12-year-old boy wrote it. No offense to 12-year-old boys.
Maybe it's just me, but did you spot, or maybe it's just me hallucinating, a Jell-O vagina?
I don't know. I didn't see that. I wouldn't put it past this movie.
So, like, there's a scene at the dinner table where it, like, cuts to a shot of, like, the rest of the spread, and it looked like a Jell-O vagina. And I was just like, is that like a weird commentary by Dan Aykroyd? Because, like, there's like a bunch of floppy dicks, and then, like, oh, there's a Jell-O vagina. And I was just like, what the fuck is this movie even? Like, why? Dan Aykroyd's not a dumb guy. Like, no. I don't believe he's dumb. I know he's written other things.
Yeah, I mean, this is his only directed movie, and...
I don't think the movie's poorly directed, do you?
No, not really. Well, you know what? Towards my biggest beef towards the end of this, like, just technically wise and, structurally. So, towards the end, and they, of course, are hinting at this throughout the entire thing, that Dan Aykroyd's Judge character wants Chevy Chase to marry John Candy's drag character. Oh
my God. A character that Dan Aykroyd said in an interview with Arsenio at the time that it's not a cheap drag character. Except it totally is.
It is. I mean, you know what? John Candy does look great. That's fine. I will give him that. He does look great. But it's such a tired joke. It's a tired joke, and even then, like, the whole, like, oh, we have to marry you off to... And that's exactly... And again, going back to that fucking episode of Tales from the Crypt, where they want Ed Begley Jr. to marry the, ugly Tim Curry daughter. This is the exact same thing. And so they are getting married, and they have this whole thing. Meanwhile...
Do you think John Kerry's character was mute because they didn't feel comfortable with John Candy speaking in, like, a high-pitched female voice?
I don't know, maybe John Candy was just like, I'll put on the dress, but I'm not fucking doing the rest.
But this character has to be, and I quote, struck dumb at birth by a bolt of lightning.
Yeah, okay.
Sure, why not? Fuck you, movies, am I right?
While Chevy Chase and John Candy are getting married.
Again, why are we saying this right now? But whatever.
In the junkyard, Demi Moore is running away from those two twins, and she gets
one
stopped.
Of which played by Dan fucking Aykroyd.
Yes, and she gets stopped by John Candy's character in drag. And these two things happen, not right, like, that happens, and then a few scenes later, Chevy Chase is getting married to her, but then we switch back to the junkyard at the end because it's the whole climax of the situation.
Literally, the whole climax of the movie.
And John Candy is back in his normal outfit, like his normal drag outfit, just regular dress, still holding Demi Moore hostage. And I'm like, how did that happen? Because you were just married and in your drag, like your whole big wedding gear, and now you're all of a sudden back here? I don't know if I zoned out or what, and that's totally
Dan Aykroyd was the director, not the editor, okay? Like, you just missed, like, the important parts of this movie, which were John Candy as a woman who's fucking mute because they don't feel confident with John Candy speaking in a woman's voice.
Or something. Yeah. Oh. This movie wow.
The most surprising part about this movie, you know who the director of photography was?
Dean Cundy.
Dean fucking Cundy. Dean, I helped like, John Carpenter shoot the fucking thing, Dean Cundy. Like, what is going on, Dean Cundy? What did Dan Aykroyd kidnap you?
Decently to do this movie. I mean, this movie didn't make any money, but at the time, whatever he got paid was probably decent enough, because, I mean, it was Dan Aykroyd, and...
Do you know what his two projects were before Nothing But Trouble? Back to the Future 3 and 2! Like, will you go from Back to the Future to this fucking movie? Like, ooh, wow. What is happening here?
Well, we have to talk about the one other... surprising thing about this movie.
Oh, there's only one?
We have
Jesus Christ.
You know, our one group, our Baldwin group that comes in, but later on in the movie, they track down another group of people that have to appear before the judge. And who should these people be? But the fucking Digital Underground and Tupac.
Fucking Tupac Shakur is in this movie. Tupac.
Wearing New York Yankees.
And singing, not rapping, singing.
Very nicely singing. But yeah, there's a whole like rap, like musical interlude in this movie, and that's what I meant when I said at the top of the show, when I said that this is Dan Aykroyd's like painful attempt at remaining relevant, because, you know, he's got to pull out his Blues Brothers, I got to play the piano or whatever during, you know, this rap.
Which, by the way, that is present in the song, any version of the song you listen to. So if you've seen this movie and you've heard the song, same song, all you're going to imagine is fucking Dan Aykroyd's dick nose playing the fucking piano. Ugh.
And they're around for a while. Like, they fucking are in this movie for a good, like, they're just hanging out for, like, the rest of this movie. They show up in about the middle of the second half, basically. And then they just hang out. And they're just in the place because they get, like, Dan Aykroyd says you're free to go, basically. But then they're playing the music at the wedding. They're just hanging out. They're like, okay, we showed up and we're going to stay here.
And look, like, Shock G with his fucking fake nose and glasses, it works in the 90s, but, like, it's so weird that they're in this movie. Is it, like, exactly, like, this is pre-Tupac being a solo artist Tupac.
He's not bald, like, he has hair, he's very young in this movie. I mean, yeah, that does make it a time capsule, which is very strange.
But, like, yeah, so Digital Underground shows up at the end of the movie. Oh, this is such a... And then, like, there's, like, a fucking fake-out ending of the movie, too? Would you consider... It's like a fake-out ending, right?
Kinda, yeah. Where it's just like, oh, and then we wanted to do this, too. It's just...
Like, they're, like, Brian Doyle Murray and a couple other people show up at the town, and you think, like, oh, Raymond J. Barry. Yes, Raymond J. Barry, who played a character on the X-Files between the first and second season. He's a fantastic character actor. You're like, oh, they're gonna fucking stick it to these Vulcanizer fucking Vulcanvania freaks, and then it turns out they're all friends? Like, what sense does this even make anymore?
The state police, like we said before, like, it's the whole state, like, there's 100 people here who are all just like, yeah, we love the judge. And I'm like, what universe is this, though? Where do we live? At least in Texas Chainsaw Massacre universe, that is just normal people came across some really fucked up people.
The rural 70s.
In the rural 70s. But this is like yuppies not that far out from the city. Like, they're not that far away when they run into this. Like, they're pretty much in New Jersey. Like, they're right outside of New Jersey is basically where this is located. And it's this whole surreal town and all of these...
I guess they like them because they kill people. Like, they do what the cops can't do, which is, like, well, punish with impunity, right? Like, they do what the cops can't do, which is, like, punish with impunity. So Jimmy Hoffa had drugs on him, so we just killed him. Like, the cops like that because they can't just kill people. So Judge Vulcanhizer can just kill people if he wants to.
Right. And that's where they kind of establish that at the beginning of this, where it's like, oh, John Candy gets upset that that Dan Aykroyd doesn't let Chevy Chase and Demi Moore go because he says, oh, they don't have any drugs or weapons on them. Why?
But he's a banker.
Why are you making them stay? But he's a banker, so he wants him to marry Aldonia, I guess.
Oh, you know what the ultimate failure about this movie is that you have a first-time director who happens to be, like, one of the most beloved comedic actors of the 80s. And he casts some truly talented comedic actors. John Candy, Chevy Chase, Taylor Negron. Because I'm not going to forget Taylor Negron, even if his Brazilian accent is grating. And not only do you put them in what would widely consider to be one of the most bizarre fucking, like, setups of you're the director, but you're also acting in the film as two characters, and sometimes you have to direct in fucking makeup. Like, that's uncomfortable for some of the actors. You have written the script yourself, so you're the producer, you're the director, you're an actor, and you're a screenwriter, which can't be easy for anyone, because normally the screenwriter doesn't get a say in how the fucking final product comes to screen. And so this movie wastes their time, and you've wasted their time because you think, oh, I've got this great idea about, like, this thing that I experienced in real life, but, like, it just, you wasted John Candy, you wasted Chevy Chase, and it's like, dude, oh my God, like, holy shit.
John Candy's not really in this. I mean, he is in this movie.
But, like, he's fucking mute.
Say anything.
Yeah, his character is mute.
Well, even his other character that's not mute really doesn't talk a lot and really disappears when Taylor...
Negron?
Yeah, Negron and his sister escape.
Which is like, what, halfway through the movie?
Yeah, they escape, and then John Candy helps them escape, and then you don't see them until the very end of the movie when evidently he's gone off to live with them in their beautiful, Brazilian home.
And he bangs the sister.
Yeah, now he's like, him and Ronaldo are a thing, I guess. Okay, fine, whatever. But
again, we're not, like, coming to conclusions here. This is what the movie straight up tells you.
Right, it's just... John Candy's in this movie, but not really. And
Chevy Chase is, like, going through the motions.
Chevy Chase is just saying things.
And like, look, like I've said before, I'll say it again, Dan Aykroyd, like, I can see him thinking this was going to be a good idea, but, man... Like, you need a filter.
This is a case where you see something that's like the Ghostbusters, where it's Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray and all of these minds.
And let's not forget, Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis wrote the script for Ghostbusters,
right?
Which makes
Not just Dan Aykroyd,
right? Which
Harold
makes
Ramis wrote Ghostbusters,
right? Like, that's the question. Like, how much of Ghostbusters did Harold Ramis edit? Because, like, if Dan Aykroyd is like a crazy person who has these like outlandish ideas of like a fucking model train at dinner with the fucking hot dog, mustard, and ketchup on the train, like, what did Harold Ramis be like? No. And I said, no again, Dan. No more, Dan.
Yeah, it's like, hey, the Beatles are great together, but you split them up and they're just mostly fine.
Yeah. One of the four is good, and the other two are dead.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're completely right. Like, they are not greater than the sum of their parts. Like, no, they're just not. And like, that is a weakness that is really exposed in this film. And again, we couldn't find the script. I wanted to read the script because the Universal executives fucking greenlit this movie from the script. So they must have thought it was something. And look, there's a Starlog article that you can find online that has like some more background information about this movie. John Hughes and John Landis turned it down. So like, but the studio execs were like, yeah, Dan Aykroyd, he's a known quantity. Ghostbusters, Spies Like Us, Blues Brothers. He must have some like relatability value. And they approved the movie. And read the script. Like, we couldn't find the script, but God, you can't tell me this shit wasn't in the fucking script.
No, but it's just...
It had to be. There's no way it was this different. Like, he didn't write weird. Fucking Great Gatsby as a script and then create this abomination on screen.
And it's so weird because, like, the 80s and 90s, I mean, pretty much up until, like, the last 20-some years, there are just tons of random, weird-ass fucking movies that came out.
Heart Condition. That features Denzel Washington and Bob Hoskins.
Yeah, now that everything's about IP and merchandising and franchising or whatever, it's very hard to go to the movie theater and not see, a sequel, a remake, or whatever. But,
or a tangentially related fucking franchise.
Exactly, a spin-off, something. But this movie is not good and I don't recommend it. You shouldn't watch it. But it is... I do long for a time where, like, movies like this could happen because people were taking chances, at least.
Like a completely original idea.
Yeah. Oh, it's very... I mean, yeah, we're saying that
it's an original idea. Like, what were you referencing?
We're talking a lot about it taking from Texas Chainsaw Massacre and other movies, but fine, whatever. Nothing is wholly original, and that's where this base idea very much
Texas Chainsaw Massacre was based off of Ed Gein. Like, it's not... That wasn't original.
No. And I mean, just because, it's the core story through line is roughly the same. But like I said, just the way this movie's put together, just certain ideas, just style, everything. It's very original. And no, it's not good. And like I said, I don't recommend it. But it kind of sucks that we don't, there's no opportunities like this really right now.
It kind of sucks that this movie is the reason why studios don't give people non-IP projects. Because they're just like, oh, this was a fucking $30 million loss for us.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's not an exaggeration. I think the budget was like 40
some, and they made $8 million.
Like, that's 32 million, 31 and some change $1 million. Like, holy shit. Like, no one is going to take a chance on some shit that Dan Aykroyd pulled out of his ass any more than if, Seth Rogen or Adam Sandler did. If the budget's not 40 million.
If you're going to take on original projects, then take them on from writers and directors that aren't giant, well-known names. And only do one thing.
Would you consider this his vanity project? Because like every director has that one.
Probably. I mean, if it's
which is weird that this is his first directorial film.
He's a director. He's the writer. He's producer. He's whatever.
He's director and screenplay, and he's an actor. So that's the three biggies.
He's playing like two characters, and you can tell that he's going for it. If anybody's going for it in this movie, he is. He is absolutely trying his fucking hardest to make this movie work in both his acting and his directing. It doesn't, but...
That's the wild thing about this movie, is it... Like, as much as I do not like the character of the judge in this film, Dan Aykroyd does not leave anything in the fucking cutting room. He is going for it 100%. Mm-hmm. Like, it is a bizarre, upsetting, disgusting at times performance, but you gotta give him credit for going for it, because nobody else seems to be. But at the same time, it's also because he was the director and the writer. Like, he felt like he had to be the one not phoning it in because his name is on everything else, right?
Right. But I mean, hey, if he wrote it and it's from a story by his brother, I think it's safe to say that this is a vanity project. It's a project that he believed in wholeheartedly, and it was sort of one of those things where it's like the phrase "kill your darlings." Like, that's like, maybe not that idea. But he did it, and here we are talking about it, like 29 years later.
And that is the thing about this movie that, like, I think we can't overstate is, it's not good, like, at all. And the effects are disgusting, and that's an intention, not a reaction. Like, they're intended to be disgusting. That's the reaction that they get. The acting isn't great. We don't know what the screenplay is. I would love to read the screenplay to see what the Universal Studio execs skimmed over and apparently didn't read. But, like, this movie did get made. You can go watch it right now on iTunes or Vudu for free or fucking YouTube. I mean, you can go watch it. It exists. It has Dan Aykroyd. It has Chevy Chase. But it's not good. So you applaud it for the fact that it got made, but you have to, like, really... reckon with the fact that it is just a piece of shit.
Yeah, don't let those 5-star reviews on Letterboxd sway.
No, are there 5-star reviews on Letterboxd?
There are a couple. What are
these people watching? Like,
they're not reviewing it though. They're just putting on the stars, so I can't really actually validate any of their
Listen
opinions,
here, if you're on Letterboxd right now and you're giving 5 stars to shit, fuck you. Because this movie, if you're ironically giving it 5 stars, go fuck yourself. So here's the thing. So IFC and Complex both wrote articles about, like, how this is either, I think Complex said, the best, it was in their list of, like, underrated comedies of the 90s, and IFC had it as a 90s comedy they want to see a sequel of. Like, fuck. No, fuck you. Like,
God, no.
Ironic,
hey.
You pieces of shit just trying to
With
be,
the
like,
same
fucking
people?
hip. Yeah, oh yeah, Demi Moore and Chevy Chase and Dan Aykroyd in 2019. We're just trying to be cool, hip, and ironic. Like, you dicks. Nobody wants to see a sequel to this fucking movie. Like,
nobody wants to see Chevy Chase in anything anymore.
Chevy Chase, like, oh my God, we could do a whole hour-long podcast about Chevy Chase, the man, the myth, the apparent human piece of garbage. I mean, Chevy Chase, I think, was, like, harassing Dan Aykroyd on set during this movie.
He was harassing everybody on set during this movie, I'm sure.
And then...
Poor Demi Moore actually has to kiss him. Gross.
Right. And, like, they're on Arsenio together, like, fucking like trying to like grit through their teeth and bear it. And like
It's so
Dan,
great. I love this.
yeah, I love Chevy Chase. He's the best. And like, it's just knowing what we know now about Chevy Chase, who is like just a monster to work with. Like, oh my God, I feel bad.
I read on the IMDb trivia, however true that is, that somebody that one of like the construction workers on the set like said he'd drop a brick on his head if somebody wanted him to.
If he saw him treat Dan Aykroyd like garbage.
Yeah.
Holy shit, that's intense.
It's like, I will murder you.
Yeah, I will kill you if you treat Dan Aykroyd like garbage. Like, just think about that. And so, like, again, like we've said, like, yes, applaud the movie, it got made. But that's kind of like Dan Aykroyd's directing career. That's where it starts, and that's where it stops. Like, that's it. Like,
Yeah, and I feel bad. Like,
really, like, there's a point in this movie where a character has a cock for a nose.
That feels bad to see like people's like passion projects just crash and burn.
Yeah, but
like,
Jess, in this movie, a character's nose looks like a cock. Like, that's
true.
Unexcusable.
And Dan Aykroyd has more money than I'll ever have in my life, so you know what? Yeah, fuck this movie.
He sells vodka in a bottle that's a skull, okay? Like,
so cool.
He gets it, guys. He understands what we're about. We want to drink skull vodka. Yeah, look, Dan Aykroyd, it must be nice to have a passion project. I have my own passion project in my mind. I'm sure Jess does in her mind. But, dude, there's a reason they're a passion project and not reality. Like, if this is the movie you wanted to make, which, Jess, I think you and I agreed, this is the movie he wanted to make.
I think so. I don't think the script is really, like, even if you had found it.
You don't think it's that different?
It wouldn't have been that different. I mean, why would it wouldn't really have to
right,
be,
it wouldn't have to be because the director is the writer, so what is he going to do? Be like, I'm not perfect already?
You know? Yeah, if there was any, like, rewriting or improv, like, going on.
He just chose to do that. It wasn't forced.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like the script is probably pretty similar.
Is that why I couldn't find the script? Because the script is just the movie. One in the same. There's no difference.
It is what we word said for word.
I believe. Jess, I kind of believe it. Yeah.
The way they say, I mean, the way Chevy Chase and Demi Moore kind of like deliver some of these lines, it's like, yeah, they literally just read that off the script.
Yeah, like
right before he said action.
And here's the thing: like, we could do at the Kulturecast, we could do a whole month of Demi Moore movies. We could do a whole month of Chevy Chase movies. We could do a whole month of Dan Aykroyd movies. This movie wouldn't show up in any of those months because there are so much like more exciting and better movies to watch featuring these actors than this nightmare of a movie. Because at the end of the day, Chevy Chase made like a handful of movies in the 90s. This and Memoirs of an Invisible Man came out the same year. And oh dear, those movies, like, boy, talk about a film that is not the director's best work. I'm talking about John Carpenter, not Dan Aykroyd.
And I mean, yeah, that's oof.
And that's the thing about this movie, is it is a, like, weird mismanagement and mishandling of actors who are great in everything else. And that's the biggest disappointment.
I mean, it is, like I said at the beginning of this, it's just so strange that there's this, like, pool of very talented people, and they're just, nothing good happened in this movie at all. There was no good not one good delivery, not one good laugh,
not a laugh?
Nothing, not one laugh.
Did you laugh in the movie at all?
Not like at the movie, anything in the movie. I maybe like laughed at just how fucking stupid it was at points, but no, I didn't laugh. I didn't laugh at anything that he wanted me to laugh at. Like, I was just.
Well, that's the thing. Like,
the absurdity that this was even a movie I was watching.
and that's the thing to me that is the weirdest is. What I don't know about Dan Aykroyd is, like, did he not want us to laugh? Like, did he want us to just find it humorous, not laugh out loud funny? And that's what I don't know. Because if that's what he was going for, right, yeah, it's just, oh man, it's just a fucking, it's, like I said it, like I've said before about things, genre mixing is hard. Mm-hmm. And if you don't nail it, you get this movie.
Yeah.
And it is a mess.
And it's also, like, much longer than it needs to be.
Well, yeah, it's like, what, 2 hours?
It's almost 2 hours, yeah. This movie easily could be an hour and a half. Like, actually, no.
If it needed to be even that long, right?
It's an hour and 34 minutes. Well, it feels like it's 2 hours.
Yeah. Oh, dear. Yeah, it's
80
just...
minutes could have been.
Yeah, it is just... from the Dick Nose to Dean Cundy to everything about this movie just being such a failure. Do you know what was in production at the same time as this movie? At Universal? Bonfire of the Vanities. Another movie that is like a notorious failure.
Ooh.
They were on, like, Tom Hanks, who was in Bonfire of the Vanities, went and visited the Nothing But Trouble set. Like, that is like black holes swirling around each other at the same time. Like, Bonfire of the Vanities, I've never seen it. I know about it. It's like one of the more notorious film failures of the last, like, 30 years.
Yeah, I've never seen it either.
But it has, like,
But it's
Bruce
also
Willis
like a super
and
drama.
Yeah, it has, like, Bruce Willis and Tom Hanks and
Melanie
I think
Griffith and
yeah, and it's a
Brian
De Palma
movie,
film.
right?
Yeah. And, like, but it is like a notorious bomb.
I don't know, I kind of feel like I would rather watch it though.
But here's the thing: it might be worse than this movie, and that is a horrifying prospect, isn't it? Like, this movie's really bad.
Okay, it's a director that I like, and it's a bunch of fairly talented people, but it could be a mess. It could be a giant mess.
And here's the other thing about this movie: think about if this movie hadn't been a failure. Maybe Dan Aykroyd would have gone on to, like, direct some actually great movies. Even if he didn't write them. But, like, this movie was such a failure, he was like, I'm done. Like, I made one fucking movie, never again.
Has Bill Murray directed anything?
I don't know. Has he?
I'm not sure.
I don't think so. Bill Murray is, like, that weirdo recluse guy who doesn't... Like, that was always the thing about Ghostbusters 3, was that Bill Murray is the reason it didn't get made. Because he was like, I don't want to do another Ghostbusters movie, fuck you guys. So, that's like what I've always heard about Bill Murray, is he's like a massive pain in the ass. So I can't imagine him directing anything, right?
He directed one movie called Quick Change in 1990.
1990.
Yep, with the... Oh, wait. Hold on. It says...
But he was in the fucking movie. It's just like Nothing But Trouble.
He co-directed it with Howard Franklin.
What does that even mean?
I don't know.
Co-directors? This ain't the Coen brothers.
Randy Quaid in it, too.
Randy Quaid. Boy.
But yeah, no, he's mostly just an actor and occasionally a writer. But... Jeez.
I mean, look, here's the thing. God rest his soul. Harold Ramis was the more talented of the three of the quote-unquote Ghostbusters. I will go on a limb and say that. Clearly you agree. So, because Harold Ramis took, like, a massive, like, time away from, like, acting, and he essentially did directing and writing, we get shit like this. We get this fucking nightmare of a movie. Because this movie came out...
Nothing but trouble.
Yeah, this movie came out in 91. Harold Ramis stepped away from acting after 86 and came back in 93 with Groundhog Day. So, Dan Aykroyd's like, well, if Harold can do it, I can do it. No.
No,
you cannot, sir. And the other kind of disappointment here is, like, this is the movie we round out the month with.
Yeah, man.
Right?
This is your...
This is the... And you've never seen the fucking first time we do, and you've never seen September, and this movie is the movie that we round out the month with.
I sure have never seen it.
I sure have never seen it, and frankly, you don't have to, because I did.
Yeah, pretty much.
So what would you give the film out of 5?
I'm gonna give it a 1.5.
1.5. Oof. I'm gonna give it a 1.
There's nothing good about it.
Again, outside of the, like, round of applause for you, Dan Aykroyd, for getting your movie made. No.
Right.
Can you imagine if he had edited this movie? Like, oh my god, it would have been 10 times worse. And it's bad enough. Like
him editing the essentially music video sequence in the middle of it.
Yeah, same song by Digital Underground. What the fuck? Oh my god. I still can't. There's so many things about this movie I can't believe. The fact that Tupac is in this movie is, weird enough as it is. I'm gonna give this movie a 1. A solid 1.
Solid 1, that's
like,
fair.
If you really want to watch this movie, which some of you who listen to this are going to be curious, you're going to go watch it. It is I like to say this sometimes, you're not failing, you're failing upwards. Like, it is upwards failure. Like, it
absolutely is. I mean,
he goes for it, but he fails at going for it. So it's a failure, right?
It's an abject failure.
But you think he failed upward too.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, I think that, we've definitely come to the conclusion, and I'm sure that, many agree that, yes, Dan Aykroyd's probably the lesser talented of that kind of group of people just by himself, and him being sort of associated with that group allowed him to, I think, get a lot farther than he would have ever gotten sort of on his own. But
and that's why we have this.
Up here. Failure upward, definitely.
Yeah, like I said, he goes for it as the judge in this movie. He leaves nothing on the table. It is all out there. Like, he goes for it. But it's a failure. And then there you go. Oh, God. So, let's take a break and we'll play a preview for the next Kulturecast.
I remember the story like this. It was a dark and scary night, kind of like tonight.
25 years ago, a horrible crime was committed in the town of Cherry Falls. Now...
You haven't heard about Rod and Stacy?
Did they break up?
Break up! Wake up! They're dead!
What their parents hid in the past.
Nobody has seen or heard of her for over 25 years.
Mom, do you know anything about a woman named Laura Lee Sherman?
No. Why?
Is haunting the present.
Who is it?
Is your mom home?
No. She didn't tell you I was coming by.
4 teenagers have been killed, a 5th viciously attacked.
All victims appeared to be virgins.
Everyone's decided to take themselves off the endangered species list and have sex.
I need to ask you a personal question about how far you've gone, base-wise. Can you go further?
Tell me about Laura Lee Sherman. Tell me.
That was 25 years ago.
Do you think she goes all the way?
Doubt it.
You gotta come. Come on.
This is my post. I can't just split.
Cherry Falls.
Don't you want your first time to be something beautiful, something romantic?
That's right. On the next Kulturecast, we're going to be kicking off Horror-tober 2001, A Horror Odyssey. Because we're only talking about horror movies that came out in 2001. Not my idea. It's Jess's idea, which makes it that much better. Like, I'm excited, because that is a oddly specific year in horror, yet a lot of movies that I guarantee you have seen came out in 2001. We're going to be looking at a film called Cherry Falls, which I actually haven't seen, but it does star Brittany Murphy, of all people. She has, unfortunately, and she passed away a couple years back, right?
She did, yeah. Unfortunately.
So she's in that, and she's
in that. Do you know anything about that movie?
I don't know anything.
Okay, you should go in cold. Just go in cold.
But you will be joining me to talk about Cherry Falls. So that's the thing. I made you go into a movie cold, and now you're making me go into a movie cold.
Yep.
I think it's fair.
I think that it's definitely better than what we just picked.
I was going to say, I hope to God the movie that you picked was better, because the movie I picked was awful. So yeah, 2001, A Horror Odyssey is this year's Horror-tober, which means only horror movies that took place in 2001. We're going to cover kind of what I would think is the one big one at some point during the month. So if you like a horror series called Final Destination, we'll talk about the first Final Destination movie.
Well, I guess we should say that this is specifically 2000, actually, not 2001.
Is it 2000? Oh, I thought it was 2001. I thought it was, pre-2000. Okay. Boy, I fucked that one up, but it's fine. Pre-2000. I thought it was 2001, so it's 2000, excuse me.
No, yeah. So basically, yeah, I picked that because it's like pre-2001 because so many things changed after that.
Yeah, like post 9/11, it's just like...
What you're seeing on screen is totally different.
Like post 9/11, it's just Hostel and Saw and... torture porn for like a decade. So,
pretty much.
Yeah. Until the Saw movie stopped, it was pretty much just torture porn for a decade. So. But yeah, so you'll be joining me to talk about Cherry Falls, which I've never seen, so I'm excited to see it. Until then, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at writer Jess Byard. You can also find me on our podcast, Chris, the one-season show, where we talk about shows that only lasted one season. And we are just about ready to, we're like 1 or 2 episodes away from wrapping up our first season, which we...
2 episodes of Werewolf. 2 episodes of Werewolf, and we're done. And
we're done. We'll move on to the next show.
And hopefully it's not about a werewolf man who's just, who
bounces from town to town.
But if you it's like The Fugitive, but if written by Dan Aykroyd. Like the writing talent of Dan Aykroyd.
But with better effects.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you've got Dan Aykroyd writing, so it's going to be garbage, but you've got fucking Rick Baker doing werewolf suits, so there you go.
Exactly. And and then you can find me on a lot of episodes of this here podcast.
It's true. It's true, folks. She's been here a lot. You can find me on this podcast. You can find me on Chronicles from the Crypt, where I talk about Tales from the Crypt once every 2 weeks, so twice a month, unless it's December or whatever other fucking month goes to 31. I guess October, so next month. I am also on a podcast called Dreams for Sale, where I talk about the Twilight Zone 1985. And I'm also on a podcast called The Kolchak Tapes, where I talk about Kolchak the Night Stalker. And that podcast is almost done. We're switching to Barney Miller after Kolchak. So, yeah.
Wow, I've never
I don't know.
Barney Miller.
I am, and you are way too young to watch.
I'm very, I love horror movies, that's true, but when I was a kid, I fucking loved TV Land, so I have a lot of really random knowledge about old TV shows, but Barney Miller is one that, for some reason...
That's the blind spot? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
How old are you? Are you the same age as I am?
I am 29. I will be
Barney Miller, not something I had any... But I Love Lucy?
Oh, I love that show.
I know the shit out of that show.
All of that, yeah.
Yeah, like fucking, I know Ethel and Fred, like I know that shit to the T, but like Barney Miller, MASH, no fucking clue. No clue, because that wasn't Nick at Night, and my mom didn't talk about fucking MASH or any of that other shit. It was fucking I Love Lucy. So Barney Miller coming to you in 2020, year of our Lord. Thanks again, as always, to everyone for listening. Kulturecast.com is where you can find the podcast. We have some links to iTunes, Patreon. If that's your thing, cool. If not, just ignore the last 10 seconds. Big thanks, as always, to _91 for Thunderous, the intro, outro for the Kulturecast, and we'll catch you on the next episode.